Welcome back to Zura's Folktales, the only channel that brings you unbeatable stories daily. We are building a collection of the best African stories. Don't miss Reverberations podcast next Friday. Now enjoy. Chidubem sat in the dimly lit living room, staring at the peeling paint on the wall. The fan above made a slow, creaking sound as it turned, barely offering any relief from the heat. He could hear Gloria's sharp voice from the bedroom, speaking on the phone with one of her friends. She was laughing, her voice loud and confident, a tone she never used with him anymore. It had been 6 months since he lost his job at the construction company. 6 months of waking up to endless job searches, rejection emails, and the crushing weight of feeling useless. At first, Gloria had been supportive, telling him everything would be fine. But as the months dragged on, her patience faded. Now, she barely spoke to him unless it was to complain or remind him that he contributed nothing to the house. The sound of her slippers dragging against the floor pulled him out of his thoughts. Gloria stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "So, you're just going to sit there and do nothing, eh?" she scoffed. "At least sweep the floor or something. Since you don't have a job, you should make yourself useful." Chidubem exhaled, clenching his jaw. He wanted to remind her that he used to take care of everything before now, that he was the one who paid the rent, bought her clothes, and even sent money to her family. But he knew it wouldn't matter. In her eyes, he was no longer the man he used to be. "I applied for 3 jobs today," he said quietly, trying to keep his voice calm. Gloria laughed, a short, mocking sound. "And did they call you? Or are you still waiting for a miracle?" His hands curled into fists on his lap, but he said nothing. He had learned that arguing with her only made things worse. That night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Gloria slept beside him, her back turned. He thought about the man he used to be, the respect he once had. He had to find a way out of this, not just for himself but for his dignity. But he had no idea that his life was about to change in a way he never expected. Chidubem sat on the edge of the small, worn-out bed in their one-bedroom apartment, his hands clasped together as he stared at the cracked floor. It had been 2 months since he lost his job, and each day felt heavier than the last. The walls of the room, once a place of warmth, now felt like a cage tightening around him. Gloria had stopped seeing him as a man. He could feel it in her voice, in her eyes, in the way she spoke to him as if he was beneath her. That morning, as he reached for the last cup of Gary in the small container, Gloria stormed into the room, her expression filled with irritation. "So this is what you do all day? Sit around and eat while I break my back to put food on this table?" Her voice was sharp, cutting through the silence like a blade. Chidubem sighed. He had lost count of how many times she had thrown words like these at him, but it still hurt. "Gloria, I have been looking for work. You know it's not easy. I have submitted applications everywhere." She scoffed. "And what has that changed?" "Absolutely nothing. I'm the one paying the bills, feeding you, and yet you sit here like a lost puppy. You're a disgrace, Chidubem." He clenched his fists, forcing himself to remain calm. He had never imagined his wife would speak to him this way. The woman he married, the woman he once adored, now looked at him with disgust. Later that afternoon, Chidubem stepped out of the house, unable to bear the tension any longer. He needed air. He walked aimlessly through the streets, the weight of his thoughts pressing down on him. As he passed by a roadside kiosk, he heard a familiar voice call his name. "Chidubem. My brother, and you be this." He turned to see Ikenna, his childhood friend, approaching him with a wide grin. Unlike Chidubem, Ikenna seemed to be doing well, dressed in neatly pressed trousers and a clean shirt. Chidubem forced a smile. "Ikenna, long time. How you day?" Ikenna's face changed as he looked Chidubem up and down, noticing the worn-out slippers on his feet and the tired look in his eyes. "My guy, whating happen? You no look like yourself." Chidubem exhaled deeply. "My brother, things done hard. I lost my job, and since then, it's been one struggle after another." Ikenna placed a hand on his shoulder. "I know say ye no easy, but you be better man. This no be your end." They sat by a small bench as Chidubem poured out his heart, telling Ikenna everything, about Gloria's change in behavior, the insults, the way she treated him like a failure. Ikenna shook his head. "Women can be something else. But my guy, you no fit just day like this. Have you thought of starting something small? Even if in a roadside hustle?" Chidubem sighed. I have. But I have no capital, no connections. It's like everything just dried up. Ikena nodded, deep in thought. Let me see what I can do. I no get much, but I fit help you in some way. No let this situation break you. Chidubem felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks. Maybe things could change. Maybe there was still a chance to rebuild. But he had no idea that his life was about to take a turn he never expected. And it would all begin with a mysterious woman who was about to enter his life. Chidubem sat outside their apartment later that evening, staring into the dimly lit street. The conversation with Ikena had given him a small sense of hope, but reality quickly crept back in. He knew Gloria would return soon, and he braced himself for another round of insults. Minutes later, he heard her footsteps approaching. She walked past him without a word, her handbag swinging aggressively. The moment she stepped inside, her voice rang out. So you've been sitting here since I left? What exactly do you do with your life, Chidubem? You disgust me. He clenched his jaw, swallowing the frustration rising within him. Gloria, I know things are hard, but... But what? She snapped, turning to face him. Are things hard for only you? Do you see me sitting around, waiting for miracles? No. I work day and night while you sit here, expecting pity. You are useless, Chidubem. Useless. The words cut deeper than any slap ever could. His wife, the woman he had built dreams with, now saw him as nothing. That night, as he lay on his side of the bed, staring at the ceiling, he realized he had reached his limit. He couldn't continue like this. He needed a breakthrough, something to restore his dignity. The next morning, determined to change his fate, he left the house early and wandered into the city, searching for any kind of work. He approached shop owners, construction sites, even street vendors, but everywhere he went, the response was the same, no job. Tired and defeated, he stopped by a small roadside restaurant to rest. As he sipped on a cup of water, he noticed a sleek black SUV pull up across the street. A woman stepped out, her presence commanding attention. She was stunning, tall, with smooth caramel skin and an air of confidence that made heads turn. Chidubem looked away, uninterested. He had no time to admire wealthy strangers when his life was in shambles. But then, something unexpected happened. The woman walked straight toward him. Excuse me, she said, her voice calm yet firm. Do you know where I can find a reliable driver around here? Chidubem hesitated. I can drive. She raised an eyebrow, studying him. Do you have experience? He nodded. I used to work with a logistics company before I lost my job. She seemed to consider his words before extending a well-manicured hand. I'm Efima. I need a personal driver. If you're interested, meet me here tomorrow morning. Let's see what you've got. Chidubem stared at her hand, his mind racing. This could be his chance, a way out of the misery, a chance to reclaim his life. With a deep breath, he shook her hand. I'll be here. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would change everything. Chidubem barely slept that night. His mind was restless, turning over the events of the day. For the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of hope. But what if this Efima woman was just another dead end? What if she changed her mind by morning? He tried to push the doubts aside, clinging to the possibility that his luck was finally turning around. By dawn, he was up, wearing the only decent shirt he had left. It had seen better days, but he straightened it the best he could. He left before Gloria woke up. He couldn't bear another round of insults that might break his spirit before he even got to the meeting point. When he arrived at the spot, the sleek black SUV was already parked there. Efima stood beside it, dressed in an elegant but simple outfit. She looked up from her phone and nodded when she saw him. You're early, she noted. I didn't want to be late, he replied, his voice steady despite the nervousness creeping in. She studied him for a moment before tossing him the car keys. Let's see if you can drive. Take me around the city. Chidubem caught the keys and took a deep breath before sliding into the driver's seat. The car smelled new, the leather seat smooth under his fingers. He adjusted the mirrors, gripped the wheel, and started the engine. As he drove, Efima remained silent, watching him closely. He maneuvered through the busy streets with ease, obeying traffic rules, making smooth turns. Driving had always been something he was good at, something that made him feel in control. And right now, control was what he needed the most. After nearly an hour of driving, Efima finally spoke. Not bad. You drive like a professional. Where did you work before? A logistics company, he said, keeping his focus on the road. But they had to downsize. I was one of those let go. Since then, I've been struggling to find work. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked out the window, as if considering something. Then, she turned back to him. I like people who don't give up. Meet me at this same spot tomorrow morning. I have an offer for you. Chidubem's grip tightened on the wheel. An offer? She smirked slightly. You'll find out tomorrow. His heart pounded as he parked the car. Efima stepped out, adjusted her sunglasses, and walked away, leaving him with nothing but questions. He had no idea what kind of opportunity she was talking about, but one thing was certain, his life was about to change. Chidubem barely made it through the night. His thoughts raced with endless possibilities. What kind of offer was Efima talking about? Was she really offering him a job, or was there something more? By sunrise, he was already up, dressed in the same shirt from yesterday, but he made sure it was neatly pressed. He stepped out of the house quietly, not wanting to wake Gloria. If she knew he was leaving again without an explanation, there would be another round of insults. When he arrived at the meeting point, Efima was already waiting. This time, she was dressed in a stylish navy blue jumpsuit, her hair pulled back into a sleek ponytail. The SUV was parked beside her, but this time, another black sedan was also there. She gestured for him to follow her. Come, let's talk. Chidubem swallowed hard and walked beside her as they moved away from the cars. You said you had an offer for me. She nodded. I need a personal driver. Someone trustworthy, discreet, and professional. The job pays well. Very well. But I need to know, are you ready for something serious? His chest tightened. Yes, I am. I just need a chance. She studied his face for a moment before continuing. Good. You'll be on call at all times. I travel a lot, and you might have to accompany me. There will be days you'll have nothing to do and other days where you barely get sleep. But in return, you'll be well taken care of. Do you think you can handle that? Chidubem nodded without hesitation. I can. She smiled slightly and pulled out an envelope from her bag. Your first month's salary in advance. Consider it a test. If you prove yourself, there's more where that came from. If not, we go our separate ways. Chidubem hesitated before taking the envelope. He could already feel the weight of the money inside. His hands trembled slightly. It had been so long since he held this much cash at once. Thank you, he whispered, his voice barely steady. Don't thank me yet, Efima said, her eyes sharp. Just show me that I didn't make a mistake. Be here tomorrow at 7 a.m. sharp. And Chidubem. He looked up. Don't be late. As she walked away, he stood frozen, gripping the envelope. This was it. A fresh start. But what exactly had he gotten himself into? Chidubem gripped the envelope tightly as he walked back home, his mind racing. This money could change things, pay the rent, buy food, maybe even start something small for himself. But he knew better than to celebrate too soon. Efima had given him a test, not a reward. He had to prove himself. When he stepped into the house, Gloria was already awake, standing by the small table with a scowl on her face. Where did you run off to this time? He exhaled and placed the envelope on the table. I got a job. Her eyes darted to the money, then back to him. A job? From where? Driving, he said simply. For someone important. Gloria snatched the envelope and opened it. Her eyes widened at the amount. Who pays this much for driving? Chidubem, what exactly are you doing? He sat down and rubbed his face. I'm not doing anything illegal, Gloria. Just trust me. Things are changing. She folded her arms. So, all of a sudden, you're making money? After all these months of sitting at home? It took you losing your job for you to finally find something? Her words stung, but he didn't react. He had learned to pick his battles. I start tomorrow morning. I need to rest. Gloria scoffed but didn't argue. She counted the money again before walking into the bedroom, leaving him alone in the dimly lit sitting room. He leaned back and closed his eyes. Tomorrow. Everything depended on tomorrow. The next morning, he arrived at the meeting point exactly at 7 a.m. Ephema was already there, dressed in a fitted black dress, her sunglasses perched on her nose. She nodded in approval as she glanced at her watch. Good. You're punctual. Get in. He slipped into the driver's seat as she settled in the back. We have several stops today, she said. Pay attention. He drove carefully, noting every turn, every route. Ephema gave minimal instructions, testing his ability to navigate under pressure. At their last stop, she finally spoke. You're better than I expected. I like that. Relief washed over him. Thank you. She leaned forward slightly. But remember one thing, Chijibem, working for me means more than just driving. You will hear things. See things. Some of them won't make sense to you, but you are to keep silent at all times. Can you do that? Chijibem swallowed. Yes, Ma. She smirked. Good. Then let's get started. Chijibem kept his eyes on the road, his grip firm on the steering wheel. Ephema's words echoed in his mind, he was to see and hear everything but say nothing. He had no idea what that truly meant, but he wasn't about to ask unnecessary questions. Take the next left, Ephema instructed. He obeyed without hesitation. The car glided smoothly down a quiet, well-paved road lined with high fences. He stole a quick glance at Ephema through the rearview mirror. She sat with an air of confidence, her phone pressed to her ear, speaking in a low tone he couldn't quite make out. Whoever she was powerful. That much was clear. Minutes later, they pulled up in front of a massive white mansion with a high gate. Two men in black suits stepped forward as Ephema rolled down her window. Tell Chief I'm here. One of the men nodded and disappeared inside while the other gave Chijibem a sharp look, as if assessing whether he belonged in a place like this. Ephema, however, remained calm, completely unbothered by their presence. After a moment, the gate opened, and she gestured for Chijibem to drive in. He swallowed hard as the car rolled forward, the luxurious compound revealing itself in all its glory. A beautiful fountain stood in the center of the driveway, surrounded by trimmed hedges and gleaming cars parked neatly in a row. He had never been this close to wealth before, and it left him feeling both amazed and out of place. Ephema stepped out, adjusting her sunglasses. Stay in the car. I won't be long. Chijibem nodded. He watched as she disappeared inside the house, leaving him alone with his thoughts. He exhaled slowly, drumming his fingers against the wheel. How had his life changed so fast? Just days ago, he was struggling to find a way to survive. Now, he was sitting in a luxury car, parked inside the compound of someone important. A sharp knock on the window startled him. He turned to see one of the men from earlier signaling him to roll it down. He hesitated but complied. You, the man said, his voice firm. How did you end up driving for Ephema? Chijibem tensed. I was looking for a job. She gave me one. The man studied him for a moment, then smirked. You must be lucky. Or maybe she sees something in you. Let's hope you don't disappoint her. Before Chijibem could respond, the man walked away, leaving behind a strange sense of unease. He turned his gaze back to the house, waiting for Ephema to return. Something told him that whatever he had gotten himself into was far bigger than just driving. Chijibem sat in the car, his fingers tapping against the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the grand mansion before him. He didn't know how long Ephema would take, but something in his gut told him this was no ordinary visit. The man's words still echoed in his head. Was he really lucky, or had he just stepped into something much bigger than himself? Minutes turned into what felt like hours before the massive doors of the mansion swung open. Ephema emerged, walking with that same air of authority, but this time, she wasn't alone. A tall, elderly man with graying hair and piercing eyes walked beside her, dressed in a crisp white senator outfit. Even from a distance, Chijibem could tell this was someone important. They spoke in hushed tones, and though Chijibem couldn't make out the conversation, the way the man gestured occasionally with his hand made it clear he was giving instructions. Ephema listened intently, nodding at intervals before responding. Then, after what seemed like an agreement, she turned toward the car. Chijibem quickly straightened in his seat as she slid into the back. The man, however, remained at the entrance, watching as the car pulled away from the driveway. The two men in suits who had been standing guard earlier now looked even more alert. Drive, Ephema said simply. Chijibem obeyed, though the silence in the car made him uneasy. He glanced at her through the mirror, but her face was unreadable. Are you afraid? she asked suddenly, her voice smooth but sharp. Chidubem hesitated. I just don't know what's happening. A small smile played on Efima's lips as she looked out the window. Good. That means you still have something to learn. The weight of her words settled over him. This wasn't just about driving. Whatever Efima was involved in, it was far deeper than he had imagined. They drove in silence for a while until she finally spoke again. You'll drop me off at my house, then return to your wife. At the mention of Gloria, Chidubem felt a familiar heaviness return to his chest. He had been out the entire day, and he knew exactly what that meant. She would be waiting, arms crossed, her sharp words ready to cut him down the moment he stepped through the door. It was a routine he had gotten used to, one he had no power to change. As he pulled up in front of Efima's grand residence, she turned to look at him directly. This is only the beginning, Chidubem. You might think you're just a driver, but soon, you'll understand why I chose you. Chidubem opened his mouth to ask what she meant, but before he could, she stepped out, walking gracefully into the house without another word. He sighed, gripping the steering wheel tighter. He had a feeling his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. And as he turned the car around, heading home to face Gloria, he couldn't shake the feeling that Efima's words held more weight than he was prepared for. Chidubem sat in the car, his fingers tapping against the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the grand mansion before him. He didn't know how long Efima would take, but something in his gut told him this was no ordinary visit. The man's words still echoed in his head. Was he really lucky, or had he just stepped into something much bigger than himself? Minutes turned into what felt like hours before the massive doors of the mansion swung open. Efima emerged, walking with that same air of authority, but this time, she wasn't alone. A tall, elderly man with graying hair and piercing eyes walked beside her, dressed in a crisp white senator outfit. Even from a distance, Chidubem could tell this was someone important. They spoke in hushed tones, and though Chidubem couldn't make out the conversation, the way the man gestured occasionally with his hand made it clear he was giving instructions. Efima listened intently, nodding at intervals before responding. Then, after what seemed like an agreement, she turned toward the car. Chidubem quickly straightened in his seat as she slid into the back. The man, however, remained at the entrance, watching as the car pulled away from the driveway. The two men in suits who had been standing guard earlier now looked even more alert. Drive, Efima said simply. Chidubem obeyed, though the silence in the car made him uneasy. He glanced at her through the mirror, but her face was unreadable. Are you afraid? She asked suddenly, her voice smooth but sharp. Chidubem hesitated. I just don't know what's happening. A small smile played on Efima's lips as she looked out the window. Good. That means you still have something to learn. The weight of her words settled over him. This wasn't just about driving. Whatever Efima was involved in, it was far deeper than he had imagined. They drove in silence for a while until she finally spoke again. You'll drop me off at my house, then return to your wife. At the mention of Gloria, Chidubem felt a familiar heaviness return to his chest. He had been out the entire day, and he knew exactly what that meant. She would be waiting, arms crossed, her sharp words ready to cut him down the moment he stepped through the door. It was a routine he had gotten used to, one he had no power to change. As he pulled up in front of Efima's grand residence, she turned to look at him directly. This is only the beginning, Chidubem. You might think you're just a driver, but soon, you'll understand why I chose you. Chidubem opened his mouth to ask what she meant, but before he could, she stepped out, walking gracefully into the house without another word. He sighed, gripping the steering wheel tighter. He had a feeling his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. And as he turned the car around, heading home to face Gloria, he couldn't shake the feeling that Efima's words held more weight than he was prepared for. Chidubem parked the car a short distance from his house and exhaled deeply. His heart felt heavy. He already knew what awaited him inside. Gloria's sharp tongue, her scornful looks, her constant reminders of how useless he had become. He shut his eyes for a moment, gathering strength before stepping out of the car. As he approached the door, he could already hear the sound of the television inside. He turned the knob and pushed the door open, stepping in quietly. Gloria sat on the couch, her arms folded tightly across her chest. Her eyes immediately locked onto him, full of irritation. So you finally decided to come home? She scoffed. Where have you been all day? Or do you expect me to believe that a driver works this late? Chidubem clenched his jaw, forcing himself to remain calm. I was working, Gloria. I told you, this job is different. I have to be available when I'm needed. She let out a bitter laugh. Different? That's your excuse? Do you even hear yourself? You leave in the morning and come back whenever you like. You don't even bring home any money. What exactly are you working for? He sighed, rubbing his forehead. I just started, Gloria. Give me time. Things will change. Time? Time for what? For me to keep carrying this family while you play driver to some rich woman? She stood up, her voice rising. Tell me, Chidubem, are you really driving her, or are you just her errand boy? Or maybe, something else? His head snapped up, his eyes flashing with anger. Don't start, Gloria. You have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, I don't. She took a step closer, her lips curling in disgust. You come home late every day, you never say anything about what you do, and now you're acting defensive. What am I supposed to think? Chidubem shook his head and moved past her, heading toward the bedroom. I'm tired, Gloria. I don't have the strength for this tonight. But she wasn't done. Of course, you don't. Because I'm the only one who ever fights for this family. You just run away. He stopped in his tracks, his fists clenched at his sides. He wanted to scream, to tell her everything he had been holding inside for so long. The pain of losing his job, the humiliation of depending on her, the weight of being treated like he was nothing. But what was the point? She wouldn't listen. She never did. Instead, he walked into the bedroom and shut the door behind him. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, feeling utterly drained. Efima's words echoed in his mind. This is only the beginning, Chidubem. You might think you're just a driver, but soon, you'll understand why I chose you. He exhaled sharply. What did she mean? And why did he feel like his life was standing at the edge of something much bigger than he could comprehend? Outside, Gloria continued her rant, but her voice sounded distant now. He had learned to block it out. His thoughts were elsewhere. Something was coming. He could feel it. Chidubem gripped the steering wheel tightly as he drove Efima back from the meeting. The air inside the car felt heavy, weighed down by unspoken words. He could sense that something about the meeting had unsettled her, though she kept her expression unreadable. You did well today, she finally said, breaking the silence. You listened, you watched, and you kept quiet. That's how you survive in this world. Chidubem nodded, unsure how to respond. Every passing day with Efima seemed to pull him deeper into a world he didn't understand, but one thing was clear, this wasn't just about driving. As they approached her estate, Efima's phone rang. She picked it up immediately. Yes? Good. Make sure it's handled quietly. No mistakes. Chidubem pretended not to listen, but his pulse quickened. Efima was involved in something big, something dangerous. When they reached the mansion, she stepped out and turned to him. Go home and rest. Be ready by noon tomorrow. Things are about to move faster. He nodded, watching as she disappeared inside. Taking a deep breath, he started the engine again, heading back to his small apartment. The moment he stepped inside, he was met with a sharp slap. The sting spread across his face before he even saw Gloria standing there, her eyes blazing with anger. So you think you can ignore me now, ABI? Coming home whenever you like? Acting like a big man because you're driving one rich woman? Chidubem clenched his jaw but said nothing. He was exhausted, mentally and physically, and arguing with Gloria would only drain him more. Answer me, she shouted. Who is she? You think I don't know? You think I don't see how you come home smelling different? I'm your wife, Chidubem. Gloria, I'm working. That's all, he said quietly. She scoffed. Working? At what? Being her little errand boy? You disgust me. He exhaled and moved past her, heading for the bedroom. I don't have the strength for this. But Gloria wasn't done. You better not bring shame to this house, Chidubem. If you mess up, don't even think of coming back here. Her words cut deep, but he didn't let them show. Instead, he lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. His life was shifting, and whether for better or worse, he wasn't sure. But one thing was clear, there was no turning back now. Chidubem arrived at Efima's estate the next afternoon, his mind clouded with thoughts of the previous night. Gloria's words still echoed in his ears, but he pushed them aside as he stepped out of the car. Today was a new day, and he had no time for distractions. As soon as he entered, Ephema was already waiting for him in the grand living room. Dressed in an elegant red gown, she exuded power and control. "We have an important trip today," she said without looking up from her phone. "You will drive me, and you will say nothing unless spoken to. Understood?" "Yes, Ma," he responded. A few minutes later, they were on the road. Chidubem kept his eyes straight ahead, trying not to listen to the hushed conversation Ephema was having on the phone. However, certain words caught his attention: money, shipment, Lagos. Something wasn't right. They arrived at a private airstrip, where a small jet was waiting. Chidubem hesitated as Ephema turned to him. "Stay here and wait for me. Do not leave." Before he could respond, she disappeared inside the jet. He watched as several men in dark suits loaded heavy black boxes onto the aircraft. His stomach tightened. Whatever Ephema was involved in, it was bigger than he had imagined. He waited for almost 2 hours before Ephema returned, her face unreadable. She stepped into the car and let out a deep breath. "Drive," she ordered. As they pulled away from the airstrip, she finally spoke. "I know you have questions." Chidubem swallowed hard. "No, Ma. I just drive." She let out a small smile. Smart man. They drove in silence, but the tension in the air was undeniable. Chidubem knew that his life was no longer simple. He had stepped into a world that could either make or break him. When he finally returned home, he found Gloria waiting for him, arms crossed, her face twisted in anger. "You're late again," she snapped. "Where have you been? Who is this woman?" Chidubem sighed. "Gloria, I told you. It's just work. Work that keeps you out at all hours? Work that makes you come home looking like a stranger?" He rubbed his temple. "Please, not tonight." She scoffed. "Fine. But don't forget, this is still my house. And if you think I will sit here and watch you disgrace me, you have another thing coming." Chidubem exhaled slowly. He knew one thing for sure: his life was no longer his own. The tension in the house grew thicker with each passing day. Gloria barely spoke to Chidubem except to throw snide remarks his way. She no longer asked where he was going or when he would be back, she simply glared at him with suspicion whenever he stepped out. Chidubem, on the other hand, had no time to explain himself. Ephema's world was fast-paced, and he was getting pulled in deeper. The errands had increased, the secrecy had doubled, and though Ephema hadn't explicitly told him what she did, Chidubem was no fool. He knew danger when he saw it. That evening, Ephema summoned him to her study. The room smelled of expensive perfume and aged wood. She sat behind a massive desk, a glass of wine in her hand. "Chidubem," she began, swirling the drink, "I have a proposition for you." He remained silent, waiting. "You've been loyal. I see that. And loyalty is valuable to me." She leaned forward, her sharp eyes locking onto his. "I want to reward that loyalty." Chidubem's heart pounded. He wasn't sure he wanted a reward from this woman. "I want you to handle something for me," she continued. "A delivery." He frowned. "Ma, I." She raised a hand, silencing him. "It's a simple task. Take a briefcase to an address in Enugu. No questions, no delays." Chidubem hesitated. He was just a driver. He hadn't signed up for this. Sensing his hesitation, Ephema leaned back with a small smile. "You don't have to do it, of course. But," she took a sip of her wine, "it pays 10 times your monthly salary." His throat went dry. 10 times? "Think about it," she said, setting down her glass. "But don't think for too long." Chidubem left the study with his mind spinning. Ephema had never asked him to do something like this before. Was this the moment he finally stepped over the line? Or was it simply another job? When he got home, he found Gloria in the bedroom, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up as he entered. "I don't care what you do anymore," she muttered. "Just don't bring your problems here." Chidubem sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his face. He was at a crossroads, and whichever path he took would change his life forever. Chidubem sat in his car for a long time, staring at the briefcase on the passenger seat. The weight of Ephema's request pressed down on him, heavier than anything he had carried before. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. This wasn't just a job anymore. A simple delivery, she had said. No questions. No delays. But deep down, Chidubem knew, nothing about Efima's world was ever simple. His phone buzzed. He hesitated before picking it up. It was a message from Efima. ***, I hope you've made up your mind. The address is already in your GPS, don't disappoint me. Chidubem exhaled sharply. He turned on the ignition and watched as the GPS directed him toward Enugu. The road stretched before him, dark and empty. With each mile, his thoughts grew heavier. Was he making a mistake? A part of him wanted to turn back, to pretend he had never stepped into Efima's world. But another part, one that had grown tired of being belittled, of struggling, of watching Gloria treat him like nothing, whispered to him that this was the change he had been waiting for. 2 hours later, he pulled up in front of a gated house. The place was quiet, too quiet. He glanced around before stepping out, gripping the briefcase tightly. He knocked once. Twice. The door creaked open, revealing a tall man with sharp eyes. Without a word, the man gestured for him to enter. Chidubem's heart pounded as he stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with an unspoken tension. Another man sat at a table, counting bundles of cash. "You're late," the man at the table said without looking up. Chidubem swallowed hard and placed the briefcase on the table. The man flicked it open, his eyes scanning its contents. A slow smile spread across his face. "Good." He nodded to the tall man, who handed Chidubem a small envelope. "Your payment." Chidubem hesitated before taking it. He had done what Efima asked. Now, he just needed to leave. As he turned to go, the man at the table called out, "Tell Madame Efima we'll be expecting the next one soon." Chidubem nodded once and walked out. The moment he stepped into his car, he let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the envelope. The amount inside was more money than he had ever held in his life. He started the car and drove off, his heart pounding. He had crossed a line tonight. Whether it was the right one or the wrong one, only time would tell. Chidubem drove back to his apartment in silence, his fingers tightening around the steering wheel. The money sat on the passenger seat, taunting him. He had never held this much cash before. It was more than his last 3 months' salary combined back when he had a job. He parked outside and sat there for a moment, his mind spinning. He had done what Efima asked. The job was done. But why did he feel like this was only the beginning? His phone rang. He flinched, then exhaled when he saw it was his friend, Obiora. He answered. "Guy, where you dey? I don't go your house, you know dey. Wedding day happen?" Obiora's voice was full of concern. "I just went out for something important," Chidubem said, rubbing his temple. "Something important? You sound off. This no be like you. E show me say Gloria don't do something again. Wedding happen?" Chidubem hesitated. "Obiora, if you get a chance to change your life overnight, but he know too clear how he go end, you go take him." Obiora was silent for a moment. Then he sighed. "E depend. If he go put you for while, beg, no try him. But if any opportunity we go free you from suffer, my brother, shine your eyes. Just make sure say he no go ruin you." Chidubem nodded, even though his friend couldn't see him. "I hear you. We go talk later." He ended the call and grabbed the money before stepping out of the car. As he climbed the stairs to his apartment, he felt the weight of his decision settle on his shoulders. Inside, Gloria was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She barely looked up as he entered. "Where you go since? You no even fit tell person say you comet," she said, her tone cold. Chidubem didn't answer. Instead, he walked past her, heading straight for the bedroom. He locked the door behind him, sat on the bed, and stared at the money again. This was it. The beginning of something new. But at what cost? The next morning, Chidubem woke up to the sound of Gloria talking loudly on the phone. He rubbed his eyes and sat up, his mind still clouded by the events of the previous night. The money was still in the envelope, tucked under his pillow. He could hear Gloria's voice drifting in from the living room. "I don't know what's wrong with that man. Since he lost his job, and so waka waka. He no even day try again." Chidubem clenched his fists. She didn't even know where he had been, yet she was already bad-mouthing him to whoever was on the other end of that call. He stood up, grabbed the envelope, and slipped it into his pocket before stepping out of the room. Gloria barely spared him a glance before rolling her eyes and walking into the kitchen. He exhaled sharply and grabbed his keys. He needed fresh air. As he stepped outside, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Ephema. Asterisk asterisk good work last night. I have another job for you. Be ready. Asterisk asterisk. His heart thumped against his chest. Another job? He hadn't even decided what to do with the money from the first one. Obayora's words echoed in his mind. Asterisk just make sure say no go ruin you. Asterisk. Chidubem walked aimlessly, his thoughts tangled. He found himself at Obayora's shop, where his friend was arranging some spare parts. Chidubem. You just day waka like person we get problem. Wedding day sup. Obayora wiped his hands on a rag and leaned against the counter. Chidubem hesitated. Obayora, if person day give you money, good money, but you know too sabai wedding day inside, you go collect. Obayora's expression turned serious. Who day give you money? Chidubem, talk to me. Chidubem sighed. Na long story, but he get one woman I help. She give me money, plenty money. And now, she wn make I do another job. I never even understand wedding I day enter. Obayora studied him for a moment before shaking his head. E be like say you don't start today play for dangerous ground. Make sure say no go backfire. No let money blind you. Chidubem exhaled and nodded. I go thinkum. As he left the shop, his phone buzzed again. Ephema had sent another message. Asterisk asterisk meet me tonight. Same place. Don't be late. Asterisk asterisk. Chidubem stared at the message, his pulse quickening. This was it. There was no turning back now. Don't forget to drop a comment and tell us where you are watching from and what time your watch says right now.